I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. You know, as May races toward June, it's budget time for a bunch of public agencies that start their new year on July 1st. And in Clackamas County, the process kind of off to a bit of a rough start. The sheriff is throwing up a roadblock to the county's plan for her department. And that is definitely our top story tonight. I got to tell you, in my opinion, typically budgets and budget hearings are kind of a snooze fest. But this year, it's different in Clackamas County. Check this out. Sheriff Angela Brandenburg sent out a letter to the public warning that her agency faces a $5 million cut. And she said it's happening because the county needs $15 million for its annual payment on the new courthouse. It does look beautiful. Here's a rendering of the place. It's expected to open in 2025. It's going to cost around $313 million, according to the county. Now, the commissioners in Clackamas County, they like law enforcement, which is why it probably hit a nerve when the sheriff drew up her own budget and proposed cutting 34 positions to absorb that $5 million cut. Commissioner Paul Savas did not seem to appreciate the letter or the sheriff's idea for cuts.
And a lot of constituents who called me, knocked on my door, stopped by my house, were asking me questions, and you know, I think there's a lot of bad information out there right now, and I don't think that's a good thing. I think that's going to confuse things here today. So therefore, I'm going to make a couple comments. Number one, we I believe all my colleagues are united on this, have said for weeks, months, that we are not going to cut any positions. That we will, if need be, we will line item guarantee every position funded in the sheriff's department. We made that perfectly clear.
Seems a little sensitive. Sheriff Brandenburg said most of those 34 jobs are vacant now. She did not like the alternative proposed, suggested by the county.
For me, there are some serious issues with it, and I don't believe it's sustainable. And so I'm going to propose or bring to the table for the budget committee to consider information about my own budget, and that would eliminate positions, unfortunately. Alternatively, they could also fund me and not defund us.
Now, the budget battle is kind of interesting, at least I think so, because of the power structure that's involved. The sheriff is independently elected by the public. She answers to the public. The county board has no power over her whatsoever. But the sheriff mostly has to turn to the county to get the money that she needs to run her department. Now, let's get into the weeds for a moment. Last month in late April, the county held a budget hearing, and during that hearing, budget manager Sandra Montoya explained that Clackamas would be changing the way that it charged departments for internal services, things like, human resources. It's part of what has the sheriff so fired up.
So I know that lots of people would say the timing is because of the courthouse. I have to tell you honestly, it would have happened anyways, whether the courthouse would have happened or not, just like we had to implement a new budget system, whether COVID happened or not. It just, life has to continue, and our plans have to move forward regardless of anything else that is happening. However, I will say that from a fortune perspective, it is fortuitous that we had this cost allocation change coming in a year when we were looking for additional funding for the courthouse.
So those cost allocations are more. Board Chair Tootie Smith also pointed out that the system needed to be changed to meet future federal requirements. But that cost allocation thing, that really is a big deal. The sheriff says the county wants to use it to force her to pull money that's built up out of a special enhanced law enforcement district that was created by voters. And it's a levy. And the money is supposed to be used to provide deputies for the rural parts of the county. Sheriff Brandenburg said when she campaigned for that levy, she promised the voters it would only be used for law enforcement.
We are a law and order county, and the people expect services. They expect us to respond when they call for help. And to take money from this funding source that the voters entrusted me with to do things that were not what the voters intended is not something I'm going to stand for. And that's why I refused to go along with the county's budget.
And with them saying, okay, Sheriff, fine, we'll create a budget for you. Has that ever happened before?
Well, quite frankly, I was stunned when I got that message, and that has never happened before. And it's my responsibility to the voters, right? And so it was difficult.
Yep, you can see that it is. And did you catch that? The county has taken the budget creation of the sheriff's office away from the sheriff. Angela Brandenburg says she's going to fight to protect the voters' tax money, and she thinks serious questions should be asked about Clackamas County's proposed courthouse.
Can we afford this courthouse? And we knew, because we were told.
Serious concerns means maybe we can't afford it?
Yeah, serious concerns for the courthouse that, maybe we can't afford it. The decision was made at the county level to move forward by the Board of County Commissioners to do this. And we were told that $15 million would have to be cut out of the general fund funding for all of our offices. That was their funding plan.
And by the way, if you wonder if this budget fight is going to end in a friendly way, it seems unlikely to me. There were more than a few verbal barbs tossed around today, including this one from Board Chair Tootie Smith.
The sheriff had an opportunity to post her budget on OpenGov, just like all the other budgets. If she knew that she was going to have an alternative budget, I would suggest the sheriff should probably follow the rules of budget law, just like everybody else is.
All right. Today they were talking about the budget for Enhanced Law Enforcement District. Tomorrow they're going to talk about the sheriff's entire budget. How fun will that be? The sheriff has asked members of the public to rally to her defense, by the way, and let county commissioners know in person how they feel about this budget. And Commissioner Ben West posted to Twitter on Friday that the sheriff's letter is specious and cynical, or at best ill-informed. He's also looking forward to tomorrow's budget discussion, quote, where all will be revealed.
The clerk will please call the roll.
Anderson, Bonham, Boquist, Campos, Dembro, Finley, Frederick, Gelser-Bluen, Gerard, Golden, Gorsick, Hansel, Hayden, Jama, Knope, Lieber, Linthicum, Manning, Meek, Patterson, Przonski, Robinson, Brock Smith, Solman, Steiner, Taylor, Thatcher, Weber, Woods, President Wagner.
Aye.
Excused, Gerard, Gorsick. Absent, Bonham, Boquist, Finley, Hansel, Hayden, Knope, Linthicum, Robinson, Thatcher, Weber, 18 ayes.
The call is removed. Colleagues, a quorum is not present.
Now, I know that's not the greatest TV that you've ever seen, but well, we wanted to see what your Senate is up to, and you got to see it right there. Did your state senator show up for work today? That was actually an extended look at the work being done or not done in the Senate today. Pretty much nothing. Those sights and sounds are becoming all too familiar in that chamber. No quorum again today as the Republican walkout continues. At last check, the two sides nowhere near compromise to bring Republicans back. The GOP want the Democrats to scrap bills on abortion, gender-affirming care, and guns. The Democrats have said the bill on abortion and gender-affirming care is not going to be changed, not going to be touched, not going to be thrown out. So the deadlock toils on. On Friday, we told you that Governor Tina Kotek and Senate President Rob Wagner have not ruled out the option of getting state police involved to force those senators back to the chamber. But that extraordinary option is still just that at this hour, an option. The session ends June 25th. That's just over a month away now, with the biggest to-do being the state budget. The governor has signed a bill to keep state agencies afloat until September if a budget is not agreed to this session. Kotek could call a special session to get a budget approved. Time will tell on that one. And tonight we're going to answer a few of your questions about the walkout that you've been sending us over the past couple of weeks. Let's start with this voicemail from Rick.
I was wondering why the Oregon Senate can't do like the federal Congress do and just consider a quorum as the majority of the people present rather than having to wait for all the Republicans to return. That would certainly simplify everything and would probably keep them from walking out.
I think you're absolutely right, Rick, but the answer is that's not possible under Oregon's Constitution, Article 4, Section 12. Here's what it says. Quorum, failure to effect organization. 2/3 of each house shall constitute a quorum to do business, but a smaller number may meet, adjourn from day to day, and compel the attendance of absent members. So, a constitutional amendment would be required to change those quorum rules to a majority instead of 2/3. The amendment would require voter approval. And by the way, Oregon is look at that. Oregon is one of only 4 states in the country to require this 2/3 agenda, or 2/3 that lawmakers are in the chamber for a quorum. The others are Texas, Tennessee, and Indiana. I was so stunned by that fact, it's hard to talk. 45 other states only require a majority. Massachusetts, by the way, an outlier, requiring 2/5 of senators and 3/8 of representatives for a quorum. Why, Massachusetts? Why? Anyway, the other question we've been getting a lot lately is this one. Susan writes, do the Republican lawmakers get paid during their walkout? I don't think I would be able to get away with that behavior in my workplace. Must be nice to take an extra paid days off from work at the taxpayer's expense. And Stewart adds, are the legislators still getting paid in spite of not working? How much per day and why? Great questions. Let's dive into what we found. Late this afternoon, we heard back from the financial services arm of the legislature. Thanks for returning our emails. They tell us, yes, legislative members do continue to be paid, even if they've walked out. A state law fixes their salary and provides 0 exceptions, so they're paid regardless of attendance. On to the question of how much. Well, the financial services folks gave us a rough estimate, $326.89 per day. That covers daily salary, per diem, and benefits. But because each member makes their own benefit selections, the daily pay actually specifically varies. But if we take that average of around $325, that means that lawmakers with 10 or more unexcused absences have taken home more than $3,200 to simply not participate in the legislature. And yes, I hear some of you who support the Republicans in their walkout. You are now yelling at the TV that they are in fact doing work by blocking those bills. Okay, that is one way to look at it. In the meantime, what other questions do you have about the walkout? We'd love to try and answer them. Send an email, will you? Our address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. Up next on The Story, farmers grapple with the issue of sustainability from season to season, year to year. But a researcher at Oregon State may have cracked the code.
If you include dual-use agrivoltaics as a methodology in your projections, you actually come up with a future that's sustainable.
But what on earth is dual-use agrivoltaics? You'll be surprised to learn that it's a process that could be a few short years away from large-scale implementation and more hope for the future. Environmental reporter Cale Williams explains when The Story returns. As Oregon and the rest of the country work to transition to renewable energy, conflicts often arise about where to put things like wind turbines and solar panels. But a researcher from Oregon State University is on the leading edge of a new way to head off some of those conflicts, combining farmland and solar panels, taking the meaning of solar farm to a next level. And as he tells it, the idea might just be a game changer. Environmental reporter Cale Williams brings us our story.
On a small research farm outside of Wilsonville, Chad Higgins feels like he's watching the future unfold.
I see a path to a future where we're not under exigent threat of self-destruction.
Higgins, a biological and environmental engineering professor at Oregon State University, oversees a 5-acre experiment in agrivoltaics. For those who haven't heard the term, Higgins explains.
It's the co-location of both solar energy harvesting and agricultural production on the same piece of land for mutual benefit.
And it's that mutual benefit that has Higgins so optimistic about the future.
More plant productivity, better quality crops, more nutritious, less water use, more energy use. That's what you get when you put them together. It's a true synergy when you put them together.
Higgins has been experimenting with agrivoltaics for nearly a decade. And one of the things he's learned is that many plants actually get more sun than they need.
So the leaves, to stay cool, they pull water from the ground and sweat, basically evaporate. That cools them off.
But that means crops use more water, and agriculture already accounts for more than 70% of global water use.
You take away the amount of light that the plants are not going to use and can't physiologically use. That reduces their stress. They use less water. You get more productivity because you have less stressed plant. So more crop, higher quality crop, less water.
Now, you could block that extra light with a shade, or you could do it with solar panels, harvesting the extra sunlight for something humans are in desperate need of, clean electricity. Once you do, you've got yourself a happy plant.
So a happy plant is a more producing plant. It's a less water using plant. It's a higher quality crop plant.
Using solar panels to regulate how much sun each field gets has shown promising results. Higgins has grown tomatoes with bigger yields and beans with higher protein content. He's raised sheep in fields under solar panels, and while the sheep didn't grow any faster, he was able to graze more of them per acre because the grass grew more quickly. He's also found that because plants cool the environment around them, the solar panels work more efficiently. But all of that was on small-scale projects. The project he's working on now at the North Willamette Research and Extension Center is the first time he's put his theories to the test at a scale resembling an actual working farm.
Where we showed that the plane could fly, but we have to figure out how to develop a commercial jetliner now.
Higgins sees the development of agrivoltaics as the kind of thing that could provide a necessary paradigm shift in both farming and energy production. Experts put the maximum capacity of the globe at somewhere between 10 and 12 billion people, and projections have us reaching that threshold before the end of the century. The limiting factor? Having enough food and water to feed everyone.
If you assume current course and we don't really come up with any new technologies or paradigm shifts, then the projections look kind of gloomy.
And by gloomy, Higgins is referring to widespread food shortages and conflicts over a scarce water supply. But because agrivoltaics increase production, cut water use, and provide renewable power, Higgins isn't fearful for the future.
If you include dual-use agrivoltaics as a methodology in your projections, you actually come up with a future that's sustainable.
Now, of course, the practice isn't all upside. It won't work everywhere or with every kind of crop. It might be hard to get insurers to cover expensive solar panels in fields where farm equipment is working. And the upfront costs are sizable. Though Higgins said his research shows that these kinds of projects pay for themselves within a decade or less. After that, they add to the bottom line for farmers.
I don't have to convince people to have a different ethical or political viewpoint or anything. It's a profitable enterprise to do it. So I'm more about changing pockets than I am about changing minds.
And that's the biggest reason why Higgins sees agrivoltaics expanding rapidly in the coming years. It's a moneymaker. From
science to full-scale implementation is going to be 5 years. That's pretty fast. And the reason for that is because it's profit positive.
Well, I've been able to corral Cale here in the newsroom to ask a little bit more about this story. Let's talk about those panels. Do they move
Indeed they do. They are on pistons, and so they start facing east when the sun comes up, follow them all day as the sun sets on the other side, and they actually can go fully vertical, and that allows farm equipment and tractors to go up and down the rows.
Okay, interesting. And he said 10 years to get their money back out of it. That seems like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the economics of this are still to be determined. This is still an experiment, and once this gets out into the open market, that will really figure out how economically viable these are. But I mean, it increases the productivity of the crops you're already growing. You're producing power that you can sell back to the grid. I mean, it's a dual benefit type of system.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's fascinating, actually. All right, and if there was wide-scale adoption of this, what do you think?
So he told me that if 1% of American farmland were converted to these agrivoltaic systems, that would meet all of our clean energy goals. And I think in his paper it said something like it would be the equivalent of removing about 71,000 cars from the road annually.
Wow, okay. Impressive and promising. We'll have to stay tuned and see how that goes. Thanks, Cale. It's great stuff.
Sure thing.
Still to come on the story, instead of looking into the possible future of farming, let's head millions of years into the past. The state of Washington is celebrating the ancient resident in a special way, and it's all thanks to the persistence of a fourth grader inspired by one of her teachers. Why Governor Inslee got involved when the story returns.
Next at 6:30, the man accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students stands silent and has a not guilty plea entered on his behalf. What that means and what's coming next in the trial. Also, what would you say Portlanders dislike the most about how the city's run? Housing? The police bureau? Something else? You may be surprised which part of the city government gets the most complaints. That's coming up at 6:30. See you then.
Washington State officially has a new state dinosaur, and it's all thanks to a 4th grade class that decided to get involved in state politics. It's the Sushasaurus. It got its name after scientists found a fossil on Susha Island in the San Juan Islands near the Canadian border. The students who came up with the idea got a lengthy civics lesson and learned something about persistence as well. Drew Mickelson with our sister station in Seattle has the story.
Okay, is everybody ready to make a law here? Let's make a law. We are here today to sign House Bill 1020.
Technically, this is a law that's been in the works for 80 million years.
I'm holding Washington State's first dinosaur.
That's what paleontologists from the UW's Burke Museum say the dinosaur they found on Susha Island walked the earth. But the trek to make Sushasaurus the state dinosaur started 4 years ago.
I would be ecstatic to see like the bill being signed and to become the actual state dinosaur. And I guess it would just make me feel accomplished.
And I believe that it would be a great symbol for Washington state. Please vote.
Athena Toscher was a 4th grader at Parkland's Elmhurst Elementary when her class brought up the idea to their state representative.
Our teacher, Miss Cole, loves dinosaurs, so we researched and noticed that our state didn't have one.
There's dinosaurs all over my classroom.
Amy Cole still teaches 4th grade at Elmhurst.
So is that going to be obtuse or cute?
What started as a civics project turned into a lesson about never giving up.
One of the things that I learned right away as a new teacher was that engagement is a hard thing to inspire in students.
Year after year, the bill failed to get enough support in Olympia. Legislators said it just wasn't a priority in the middle of a pandemic.
Athena hated school, still does. But this bill has been the one thing that has kept her going.
But Athena and her mother testified on the bill again earlier this year after Representative Melanie Morgan reintroduced it, saying it's about more than just dinosaurs.
The teachers putting this on the radar of our students, it starts setting them up for civic duty, making sure that they're voting, making sure that they're paying attention to what their representatives are doing.
This bill designates the Sushisaurus rex as the Washington's official dinosaur.
The persistence paid off.
So with that, I'm going to sign this bill, and congratulations to everyone. Okay. Athena was instrumental in this, right?
Very.
But Governor Jay Inslee had one more duty to perform.
So today, the Washingtonian of the day is Athena Toscher for getting us our state's dinosaur. Congratulations, Athena.
Never give up. If you mess something up, then fix it.
Drew Mickelson, King 5 News.
How cool is that? By the way, Oregon does not have a state dinosaur, so get your kids ready, get them going. We do have a state fossil, though. It's the Metasequoia, or Dawn redwood. It was given that distinction back in 2005, thanks to a state resolution. They flourished here between 5 and 25 million years ago and were actually found in a remote area of China in the 1940s. Specimens were taken from those trees and propagated here in the U.S. to ensure the species' survival. That's what we call a Whiz Fact for you to share with your friends and, I don't know, neighbors, maybe at Memorial Day weekend. That's the end of our show anyway. Thanks for watching, and remember the story, our collective story that never ends. Make sure to stick around now for the news at 6:30, and I'll see you back here tomorrow.